You're welcome to Business Daily on Trust TV. I'm your host, Underband Aid. Let's talk numbers. We're starting off with the stock market as of 6 a.m. this morning. You're welcome back. My name is Underband Aid. All right, so Nigerians all over the country have had to deal with different kinds of increments. Increments in the cost of commodities, increments in gas, transportation, and so many other things. And now Nigerians can add to the list an increase in the cost of electricity meters, which has gone up by 54%. Joining me in the studio today is political economist Bakare Majid, and we're going to be talking about this recent increment in the cost of electricity meters. You're welcome to the show.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure.
Great to have you here on the show. All right, so this increment took effect on the 15th of November. So it has gone up by 54%. Now, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, in a circular to all the 11 electricity distribution company discos, announced a 32.8% and 21.7% increase in the cost of electricity meters. Now, this increase, like I said, it took effect on the 15th of November 2021. And we have a little excerpt from the circular that was actually passed. We're going to take a look at that, and this is what it said. It said, it partly reads, pursuant to the provisions of the Meter Asset Provider and National Mass Metering Regulations, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission notes the recent changes in macroeconomic parameters and hereby approves an upward review of the unit price of meters. So basically what has now happened is that the current cost, or the previous cost of meters, which was 44,896 naira 17 kobo, was eventually revised to 58,661 naira 69 kobo. And that is for single phase meters. Then I believe the 3-phase meters, which was initially sold for 82,855 naira, is now going for 109,684 naira, which puts that increase at over 26,000 naira. So what are your thoughts on the recent increment? Do you feel like it was an actual necessity? Because so far, a lot of people have come out, many Nigerians have come out to actually lament about the recent increment in the cost of meters, stating that this is not the right time. But looking at the situation of things today, do you feel that it was a complete necessity for these bodies to make that increment in the cost of meters?
Whenever you put in regulators in the market, playing that role always creates confusion, because most often you still have a sector that we've not been able to let go. And the process of even letting it go in the first place was even a process that was brought about by a lot of lack of sincerity on those people who drafted some of the agreements that created those 11 discos. Because the idea of privatization in any form is to ensure that those people who have liquidity can come into the market and inject it over time, make back their money. But however, when you give out certain entity to certain persons who do not have the requisite liquidity, what you are going to have is that it's going to be a rent-seeking economy, because what they will be hoping for is that let us continue to collect this money that their government have not been able to effectively collect. Let us collect it over time, see the kind of profit we can make, and bye-bye. But however, electricity is more like a national security matter, you know, like we've discussed with the internet and some other things. Because
it's a necessity for everybody.
It is so vital that it's not an issue that you get to joke with. It's not an issue that it's optional. Using electricity is not option, because it's very, very tied to the very core of your economy, because it has to do with manufacturing, it has to do with transportation, it has to do with all bulk of things, particularly as the world continues to go electronically, so to speak, because you know you have electronic vehicles and rest. So the future of the economy depends on this sector.
The availability of
the inability to be consistent and to have a plan that is grounded in the economic reality and projection for the future is where we are today. Because in terms of metering is not for the discourse. It should even be an investment in the sense that so that you can have a situation whereby the consumers can get value for money that they are spending, and at the same time you will not be cheated, because in the days of what do you call it? These abracadabra type of billings that we used to do, which we call estimated billings. Nobody, it doesn't make sense for everybody. It was not making sense for the consumer. It was not making sense for the electricity distribution company. So when you look at meters, it should be investments by even the discos themselves and say, okay, we want to meter every one of you so that we can, you know, get our money back, because we plan to inject money. But since I really feel that they've not been injecting enough money, it has never really been a priority, and that is why the federal government, you know, following the disputes between themselves and the union over the last increment that we had in 2020, coupled with the COVID-19, came out with the idea of the whole national metering programs to ensure that, okay, you can distribute about 1 million or so meters that was being financed through the CBN. So now you now have within this point and a lot of conversation by the federal government that, you know, that there's going to be another 3 million or thereabouts meters to be distributed. So you still not have this confusion at this point and say, oh, we are making increment. The question is increment to which of them? The one you are giving for free, or which one exactly? And personally, I've had, you know, very, very difficult experience with the particular discos that operate in this FCT. That in my compound, we paid for metering. It took about over 5 months before we could get those meters. And shockingly, when we got those meters, because in my compound, we've never, you know, owed disco any amount. Even as the last one that they brought bill for us before the meter came, they were even owing us about 207 naira or thereabout. But when that particular meter came, we had about how much? About over 48,000 liability on that meter. So we called this call, we made a lot of overtures to say, okay, this thing is not right. As I'm telling you, every time I buy electricity unit, I'm paying 25% as liability for a liability that I did not incur. And I've made findings, a lot of persons have also been a victim of this same practice all over the country. And the argument, and when you look at it, is that the problem started from the old mass metering, because those people who paid money are being given meters that belong to certain persons that they are supposed to actually give those meters to for free. So you end up, you know, inheriting the liability of that person that actually that meter was for. So
when you reported the incident or reported the situation, what was the response from
the response side? Is that, okay, we'll fix it. It was an error on our part. It is, you know, this particular disco was not really willing. And so that's like personal experience to me as regard my view on it based on what. But generally, because 2 months ago I was in Ekiti State, Ekiti. I visited a cousin, and when I got to his house, I realized I was not putting out all the bulbs on things like that, which was very, very unusual. And I even went to the freezer, like, why you not in your freezer? I said, okay, they just brought some prepaid meters for us now. And interestingly, you can even bypass that, because the electricity distribution company operating there, installed it on the pole. So they just gave them a remote looking like, and it looks like calculator like this. So anytime you need to buy unit, you just press it there. So you have no business, bypassing. So at the end of the day, you can see that psychologically, he has adjusted his consumption, ordinarily things that he wouldn't do. So it makes sense if discos can look for a way to actually invest in this sector in terms of metering so that you get it right, because getting it right, I feel it is important to their bottom line if they really want to make money on the long run. That is about that, as to how there is a cost-benefit analysis for them. If you invest in this particular sector, you make money back. It just makes common sense because it allows. But unfortunately, looking at the macroeconomic analysis of the way, particularly on the inflationary part and its regards, power. With you mentioned the recent increment in value in prices of gas, which means that there was a point where it doesn't make any sense for you to use a gas cooker. The electricity cooker rather.
But
because
in this case,
gas is cheaper.
How much of an alternative for electricity is there?
Yes, so we're now...
Because even fuel is expensive, so you can't even say you run the generator.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of people moved away from the usual, those ring electric burners and the rest, even to electric boilers, and they moved to gas, because gas at one point was cheap. There was a time we were buying for $2.70, but today, as I'm telling you, I'm missing the little one I have because I'm hearing the gist that maybe it's like 800.
It might be 10,000 for 12 kg.
For 12
by
kg.
December.
This is something that you bought as cheap as maybe 5,700, some couple of months back. So now, how do you now convince people not to go back to bypassing those meters because they want to use their electric gas cooker? So between the federal government, the CBN, and the discos and every other person who is involved, there's a need, because you cannot keep on releasing circular and say we are making this adjustment, blah blah blah, because in reality, judging by the economic reality as it regards, inflation and the rest, at the end of the day, when there is inflation in the market, the masses are feeling the bites. The commodities that they buy every day. And there's one thing about the poor people. The poorer you are, the higher your marginal propensity to consume, because and then you have to spend a larger portion of your income just for consumption. So when you now have a situation like that is already biting, then you now release one circular with a lot of grammar in it and say blah blah. Whose responsibility is it in the first place to work on your macroeconomic indices?
There were a lot of questions even around it, because according to the research that I had followed up on different pages and different sites, it actually stated that there was no actual formal announcement to the consumer themselves. But anyway, there was some level of clarification on the current increment. They came out and stated that this increment was not a general thing. Apparently, it's an optional thing for people who want to have the meters installed immediately. And it also stated that about the VAT. So it's exclusive of the 7.5% VAT. But how much of a difference does it actually make to Nigerians? And what does it really say about these bodies, that's the NERC and discos themselves, if Nigerians have to come out and pay for immediate installation? What does it say about the process that they have developed, or the system that they have developed for installation of these meters?
As I've pointed out earlier, it's very, very obvious that there's a fault in the system that they have developed, particularly on distributing those mass meters. There were 1 million meters. Like in my own case, I paid. And I was expecting a quick response. But at the end of the day, it took a long while for me to get it. And it didn't just take a long while. Also, in addition, I have a situation whereby I'm paying money that I did not use. So it just shows you very well that the inability of NERC to actually regulate the disco was a big problem. Because when I sent them mail and said, this is this, attaching all relevant documents alongside some of my neighbors who had the same problem too. When you make when your utterances that you make on issues, particularly as a regulator, is not backed by action that can repose the level of confidence in the people and say, okay, this is a process, it's a process that we can trust, you're creating problem. Because as a regulator, your biggest asset is for people to be able to trust you that when we have issues, these persons will be able to act on our behalf. So, and most importantly, the discos themselves too have not been operating like a private entity that sees the consumer as a king, and he understands that when I make this consumer comfortable, he on the long run will consume more of whatever I'm selling. There was a time in this country that data bundle was something that people find like, how would I pay 1,500 for unlimited? Today people pay more. And there was a particular day that MTN had issues for a whole day having network problem. The CEO first got a text message from them, click on a particular, I even thought maybe it was someone that was trying to hack into, but over time you realize that there was continuous apology as to just a one-day glitch within their system. So this customer must understand this thing, that you have a commodity that is constantly being requested for, even with little or no advertisement. You don't need to advertise to people to use electricity.
People already know that they need it.
They need it. So what you need to be able to do is to effectively and efficiently get it to their doorstep in a way that it's not going to hurt their pocket. But I'll take you back to the beginning of this conversation. The problem started with who did we give those discos to in the first place? What is the antecedents as far as the energy sector is concerned? What is the level of liquidity that they had to actually invest in those sectors? Over time, even the government itself has realized that, because the thing is that it's an agreement that is very, very powerful, that you just can't wake up one day and tear it up and say, okay, no, we are not doing it again. So this aspect is just a single part of the entire entity. Today, if you build your own house, you still need to buy your own. You still need to buy your own electricity pole, buy your own wire. Even now, need to beg them to come. And if you dare to just get an electrician to fix the whole wire on your own, you will pay certain fines. I moved into a new house one point. I know how much we, the tenants in that house, had to pay, because our landlord was tired of waiting for discos to come around to come and connect it. He connected the electricity himself. We paid her by 150,000. And the landlord, that's a fine. And the landlord did not even bother. He just passed it on to we, because at the end of the day,
you're the final consumer.
Yes, I'm the final consumer. So, so it just passed it on to me and some other persons within the compound. So we had to pay. So it just shows you that this is a very, very important market. It's a critical market between the federal government and the discos and the regulators and the CBN, who is in charge of the monetary policy, that can really play a huge role in bringing that inflation. Something is not working right, and for that, at the end of the day, it should not be the consumers that you just pass some of these responsibilities to. It doesn't make any economic sense. It doesn't make any moral sense on the surface of it. So the question is that, what next? Because at the end of the day, in the next couple of days, you might even still bring out the same argument or say, okay, due to macroeconomic, whatever,
inflation and all that,
increase, the cost of electricity. And at the end of the day, LUT, the Nigerian Labour Congress will still come and say that you go to round table. So much uncertainty as to what next. And the irony about this whole thing is that wages are not going up. And what you're spending the money on keeps on going up.
Cost of living has gone beyond, affordability for so many Nigerians.
Even most times when government comes and says, okay, for doing this thing to cushion the effect, but if I'm suffering at 100% and you bring out something that will, cushion the effects at 20%, I'm still left with 80% of additional liability. But even within that 20%, the process has not been watertight enough for us to be able to trust the process, because the question is that, how are we sure that discos are not selling the same meters that are supposed to be for free for those who are paying for it?
All right. So looking at the, should I say, the trend so far, electricity tariff itself, now this is stepping away from the meter situation, electricity tariff itself has basically been increased about 3 times this year. One at the beginning of the year, one in the middle of the year, and then another one which took effect September 1st of this year. Even as of last year itself, I remember the president actually came out and said, oh, the reason why you're having these increments is so that you can have better electricity supply. So far, has that actually been the case?
To a large extent, because what you need to look at is that the problem has never really been the generating capacity. It has always been the ability to distribute. So in the FCT, for instance, there are places that you go to that they've been having constant electricity supply. There are in some places like that, while in some places they've not been. And the idea of breaking it down to band A, band B, band C, based on the existing infrastructure, it's a good idea. But God will help you if the discourse should mistakenly classify you that you're supposed to be in band D, based on the hours of lights that you are getting. You may end up having a meter under band A installed in an area. So in the sense that you can have situation whereby in the same area, someone will buy a unit of 1,000 naira and get 33 units. And someone will pay that same amount and get about 21 or thereabout in the same environment. So generally, the problem is the question of infrastructure. How well can we build, bridge the infrastructural gap in terms of the quality of poles, the quality of transformer, and the wire lines that bring those electricity to the neighborhood? So those are the core area that the discourse ought to have invested in. When you have this, because most times, I'll tell you, if you manage your electricity very well, with meters and neighbor, you naturally you call down expenses. Sometimes you've seen families on Twitter who come and say, we used to have 5 ACs in my house, but we've cut it down to 2, and I make sure that whenever I'm going before I go to sleep, I'll make sure that all the lights are put off. So generally people adjust.
Switch on the lights.
Yes, so people adjust their consumption with those
because they have to face the reality.
Yes, so in itself, the cost of electricity has never really been the problem. It has always been about everybody who is supposed to do their part, particularly on the discourse level, to be able to do their part and assign it regularly. Those who are supposed to be in band A, who have enough money to be able to spend maybe 200,000 or thereabout on electricity consumption, let them be on the band A. Those who have the lower income, who are supposed to be on band D or thereabout based on that, let them be on those bands. And when you see it, you look at it on both sides. I have a situation by a friend of mine, someone approached him and said, why not just bypass, this part of the light? And I asked him, I said, how much am I spending on electricity per month? This guy said he doesn't know. He said, we are 2 of us sharing this apartment, and I pay less than 2,500 monthly. So what's not the point?
All right. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but yes, I did follow up on a lot of the research. As of September 1st, when the tariff had gone up, it basically took away 50% of subsidy, I believe. It took away electricity subsidy because it was increased by 50%. And so far, a lot of Nigerians have had to, like you described, have had to actually adjust to that and face the reality of what the situation really is. Now, the question is really, what is it? What does it really mean for businesses today? Like you said, it now affects manufacturing.
Of course.
Yeah, so what does it mean for businesses and what does it mean for the final consumer?
For the in terms of businesses, what happens is that whatever you are passing to them, they end up passing it to the final consumer, and when they can no longer pass it to sustain in the market, what do? They exit that market, and when they exit the market, what happens? Taxes that the federal government is supposed to get goes down. The people that they employed, they have to let them go. So there are high level of consequences as to when you can't get it right as far as electricity is concerned. So there is a need to go back to that drawing board and design templates that can, in a way, go back to the idea of classification based on certain. So if you have businesses in places that are designated as industrial area, the kind of electricity that you should enjoy should be different from probably those who are in residential area. So we must go back, and if you look at the template for designing this FCT, there are certain places that certain things are supposed to be at, where you are supposed to have government agencies, where you are supposed to have, you know, businesses, where you are supposed to be residential. But today, it's just, you've dabarooed everything.
Yeah.
So in the quest of it like that, without those classification, it should not be difficult for you to, and most importantly, data. How are you arriving at those classification in a way that will benefit businesses and household, you know, and you can marry it, you know, together like that. I think that's critical.
All right. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time, so we do have to round up the show now. But the truth is, something really does need to be done, because a lot of Nigerians are currently suffering. A lot of them are, you know, throwing out their lamentations about the current situation. They're dealing with a lot of increment in different areas, and it's affecting the pockets of the average Nigerian. All right, so we've come to the end of our show for today, and I would like to thank my guests in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Bakari, for being a part of the show. And to all our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Please do remember to follow us on all our social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just look us up on TrustTV. You'll definitely find us there. Well, once again, my name is Chamunda Beng. Come back again for more Business Daily. Let's talk numbers.